Hang on. Of course, there goes the dog. All right. I know this one's going to be tough for the football fan, but fuck it. Somebody has to say it. What is happening, my good people? Welcome to another edition of the vlog. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me, going back to maybe not so much the very beginning, what the hell. Very beginning, somewhere in the middle, even as early as the last vlog that I put out, or any of the shorts that you may have watched. I greatly appreciate you coming back and welcome you back as well. Today, I'm going to do a little bit of a breakdown. And I'm sure you've heard of the 7 deadly sins. Well, no, I'm not gonna get into that. Although one of those 7 deadly sins certainly attribute to this particular vlog, and that's greed. And that is one of the 7 reasons why I am down on the National Football League, AKA the NFL, AKA the Shield, the impenetrable one. So let's get right into it as I roll up my sleeves. Well, you get the point. Number 1, should I even go there? I just mentioned it, greed. And it encapsulates so many different things here as we unpack this. We know that the NFL is big business. It is box office. It is appointment television, must-see TV. It dominates the TV landscape. It doesn't matter who it may be, whether it's Amazon Prime, we all know CBS, Fox, ABC, ESPN. What's next? The Cooking Channel? Doesn't matter where these games are being shown. Obviously Peacock, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later on, although that ship is done sailed when it comes to the playoff game. Really, do we have to go there to have a wild card playoff game between Miami and Kansas City streamed across one platform where if you didn't have it, oh well, you're going to miss out on it. But as it is, sadly, that's what is all encompassing when it comes to the NFL as far as getting these TV deals, as far as feeding all these mouths when it comes to the schedule, a 17-game schedule, which is actually number 2, but let's just go back to all the games. Sadly, on a Thursday night on Amazon Prime, which to me, it's boring. I understand it's something that we could look forward to, and yes, we could watch, but the sad part is that when you're watching on Amazon Prime, it's not as if you could bounce around or flicker through any of the other channels in between commercials. No, you actually have to sign off on that to get to regular TV, to then jump back on between commercials or halftime or whatever it may be. So if there is another sporting event that's taking place, especially in the months of October, November, December, how could you even think about wanting to see what's happening in the NBA, NHL, even college basketball for that matter, without having to log off the damn thing to begin with? Which is highly frustrating, and to me, I can't deal with it. But we all know the Thursday night schedule relatively, and for the most part, is a bore. And I get it that they've tried to put certain games in, which has some appeal, and I get it that the Jets, for all of the pomp and circumstance coming into the season with Aaron Rodgers out because of that Achilles injury, that a lot of those games that were on Thursday night, you're not gonna get it. Whether it's the game against Cleveland late in the year, or even the Black Friday game, which the NFL has to throw in, 3 p.m. And as we saw there, the Dolphins just ran away with the game with Tim Boyle as quarterback of the Jets. Really? That game can be played in my backyard, and there's no way I'm gonna watch that. I'm pulling the blinds. So with all of these different platforms and all of the different channels, you have to televise all these games to the point where, other than the 4:25 slot, the America's game of the week, and as well as the Sunday night game, which is usually a marquee game, but of course we all know they're gonna flex in and out of that depending how bad those teams are deep in the season. But seriously, enough is enough. I'm tired of watching Carolina and Chicago. I'm tired of watching the Raiders a million times, or the Giants early on the season. And I get it that this is what happens when you wear the schedule thin. It becomes just hard to watch. It's a thing where you just want to turn on a movie or go back to the Netflix show that you were binging prior to the start of the season. I'm tired of it. And it all boils down to that. Number 2, and I don't want to pick on him because he's actually been pretty good as of late, and what I mean by that, the last few years. But Roger Goodell, for all that had happened, especially when we go into the 20 teens, and we could go through the litany of things that were on his clock that he just either tried to stiff arm or try to sweep under the rug or just ignore altogether. Whether that's Bountygate, which he had to go back to Paul Tagliabue, the commissioner before him, to get an ear or to get some counseling to see, what should I do here, former commish? I'm having problems here with the whole dealing with the Saints and putting out bounties, whether it was in the championship game against the Minnesota Vikings, if you recall, when the Saints went on to go and win a Super Bowl, or Greg Williams, the defensive coordinator at the time, how he had to be suspended, as well as the head coach, Sean Payton. But that wasn't all on Roger Goodell. He had to get people from the outside to come in to do his dirty work and try to sweep up the mess that he wasn't able to clean up himself. Another gate, Deflategate. Do I really need to go there? Do I really need to uncover what happened there in Foxborough with the deflated footballs? I'm not gonna do it, but that's on Roger Goodell's watch. We could talk about the concussions. That in itself is a vlog where we could just dedicate all the time that was spent, whether it was the League of Denial, the book that became a documentary that they could only air it on PBS because the networks couldn't even go near it since the NFL's in bed with ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox. They had to go to public television in order for them to get this aired to discuss the concussion, everything that had transpired from the novel itself to the players that are committing suicide, to dedicating their brains to CTE, to this experiment. And then of course you had the movie Concussion come out with Will Smith. All of that was just a cauldron for the NFL that they couldn't even turn a blind eye, that they couldn't even turn the other way. And they did their best to do so because they tried to shine the light on the sport being physical, and this is what they signed up for. Nonsense. This is something that they may not have embraced at the time, but they certainly should have taken notice, considering the players that have played before them getting their brains scrambled around on every hit, and knowing that this was going to be not only an epidemic of epic proportions for the greatest sport here in North America, but the ramifications and having to peel the layers of all that. And what did they do? They poo-pooed it until they had to do something about it. And again, the watch, Roger Goodell. Now, I just don't want to continue to pick on him because I could go about his bravado at the NFL draft. I believe it was in Philadelphia, 5-6 years ago, when he came out and addressed the crowd before mentioning or announcing who was the first pick in the NFL draft. But all of that, and again, recently I know he's been good and a lot of photo ops and doing the right thing and pretty much staying quiet, but there's so many things that really turned me off about the NFL in the 20-teens that this was the beginning of one of the reasons why I've been down on the NFL. And I understand not every league is perfect, but because the high, almighty, the shield, the impenetrable, when you look at that NFL logo and what do you see? The red, white, and blue, that they could throw 1,000 different things at it and it's just gonna bounce off. And here it was again, another episode, another incident, and the NFL, do I even get it to Ray Rice? I'll just leave it right there. And how he handled that was just atrocious, where Ray Rice, a former player, Baltimore Ravens, came clean, spoke the truth. And what did Roger Goodell do? I wish I had a broom, I have a vacuum, but try to sweep it under the rug. Thank God that period of the NFL is over. Number 3, games in London, games in Germany, and now you're gonna have games in Brazil? What's next? A game in Mars? Or maybe let's see what's happening in Saturn? Enough with the NFL trying to do this. I understand they're trying to expand the brand globally. They're trying to make it like the NBA. They're trying to make it like soccer. Even to a certain extent, Major League Baseball, because we know that Major League Baseball has gone overseas, whether it be to Japan or Korea, and I believe the first series of the year in this upcoming baseball season is Padres-Dodgers in Korea. But why? The thing is with baseball, even with basketball to a certain extent, these games are global because players have come from those parts of the world. Where the NFL, it is strictly and predominantly here. And yes, there's been a few players that have come, Young Hoku and former players, whether it be Australian punters of yesteryear. And yes, not to say that the NFL has not gone outside of the United States to have players come in and make an impact. But we all know that you could go to any part of the world, whether it be in Asia or Europe or Australia, And the NFL doesn't really reign supreme. It doesn't, because there's no connection there. And I get it that they're trying to unpack what the NFL is and the whole package of how it is the greatest sport here in America and how it's been popular and popularized for several other things, which I'll get to. But you have to look at it from a 30,000 foot view. I get it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. And the games in London have been going on for well over a decade, with Jacksonville going there twice to play there, I guess as maybe London's team, who knows? But even then, I really don't have a true finger of the pulse to say that London has really wrapped their arms around the NFL. And is Germany next? Is Brazil going to be next? Is it going to go to China? Is it going to go to Africa? Who knows? But the NFL doesn't need to do this. They really don't. And how I look at it is, not to say that it has to be super exclusive only to America. Obviously, they branched out and they will continue to branch out, and who am I to tell them that? But I'm not going to get up extra early in October to watch Buffalo, Jacksonville, or any of the games that are going to be played over there, because although I'm a diehard NFL fan, and maybe I should have prefaced it by saying so, because maybe people will think that I have just a bone to pick with the NFL just for the sake of it, but that's going to come later on too, people. But I have to say, it's not going to get me geeked up to watch 9:30 in the morning here in the East where I live, the Eastern time zone, for me to just all of a sudden be like, oh, I got to turn on the TV, watch this. Sometimes I even forget the game is on. And I don't care what the matchup is. I don't care if it was Baltimore playing Tennessee, or even Miami, Kansas City, which should have been played at Arrowhead, but was played in Munich, Frankfurt. Not this guy. I don't know. Am I becoming old and crusty right in front of you guys and gals? Quite possible, but still, I have not adapted to the games in London or overseas or wherever it may be, so not for it. Number 4, and the reason why I picked it to release this video on this day is because it's between the conference championships and the Super Bowl, and this weekend are the Pro Bowl games. Pro Bowl games? Pro Bowl games? That's right, I said that. Pro Bowl games. You gotta be kidding me. Now, the Pro Bowl, when I was in my 20s, I did watch. Yes, it was football, and maybe it's tailored to the younger crowd now, because watching an exhibition, and Lord knows, here's the irony of this as I'm recording this, January 31st, 2014. 14 years ago to the day, you can even look this up, I was blessed and fortunate enough to win a trip to go to the Pro Bowl, which was in Miami. And pretty much as I'm speaking, I was actually in what was formerly known as SunTrust Stadium. It wasn't Joe Robbie. We know these stadiums go through all these names, which I can't stand, but that's every sport. But the game was being played there, where it's currently now Hard Rock Stadium, home of the Miami Dolphins. I got there halfway through the first quarter, and guess what? Halfway through the third quarter, I had to walk out. It was boredom. It was just watching paint dry on a wall. I couldn't get into it. And yes, when you get free airfare, hotel, and tickets to a Pro Bowl, what are you gonna do? Pass it up, especially in the Northeast, when my mind, as vivid as it is, was 13 degrees in New York that weekend. Look it up. So for me, why not go down there? Why not experience it? Sure enough, I did. And yes, it was one that I would not want to remember, but at the same time, I have that memory, it's ingrained, so be it. But that was the last time that I would ever watch any type of Pro Bowl, and now it's even worse because it's flag football. Are you serious? If you want to announce who the Pro Bowl team is, just announce it, and that's it. Don't even have a game. You want to have a skills competition, whatever, similar to the other sports, fine. But really? Pro Bowl games? Flag football? I guess the 20-year-old or the 18-year-old that's wrapped up in it, God bless you guys. But when you get to my age, and you get to a point where you realize that that is far from football, trust me, you're gonna feel the same way I do. Number 5, fantasy football. We understand gambling's been a part of this from the beginning of time. You gotta go back to even Jimmy the Greek when he tried to, I don't wanna say out the NFL, but if you recall NFL Today, and I've been watching football since 1977, and how could you not remember the great voice of Brent Musburger? You are looking live at Veterans Stadium or Giant Stadium or whatever it may be. And you had Jimmy the Greek, where they talked about the certain matchups on that day, and it would say Philadelphia at New York playing the Giants. And although they wouldn't go anywhere near spreads, But you know what the implications were. Jimmy the Greek was trying to tell not only just the football fan, the sports fan, but America, that yes, this team with injury reports and this one not playing and this one maybe favored a little bit more than a field goal, you know exactly where he was going. Now, I understand, it's part of the landscape. It's been like that for 100 years. But now, fantasy football. Sorry, I cannot get into it. And people over the years have coerced me. They tried to coax me into joining a fantasy football team, and I would not do it. And it's not anything to do with age, because Bill Simmons, I'm sure everybody knows who Bill Simmons is, and as you see right here, I bumped into him on these New York City streets in 2017, I believe. He's a guy that I'm sure you listen to him or have listened to him or certainly know about him. He talks about gambling on his podcast incessantly. And that's for him, God bless him, etc. And he also talks about fantasy football. Shakey's Bowl, where the first wild card game, I'll get to that in a second. First wild card game when it comes to having a scenario where everybody would get together at the end of a fantasy football year, and the Shakey's game, which is usually like the worst wild card game of the weekend, they get together and do that. Not this guy. I don't bet on fantasy football. Never have, and I can honestly say never will. And I don't want it to be a generational thing. I don't want it to be get off my lawn. It has nothing to do with that. Here's the bottom line as to why I cannot play fantasy football. I'm invested in my team and my team only, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you mean to tell me that if I were to sit and watch one of these fantasy football drafts sometime in late August, and here I am, there's going to be a guy on the board where he's going to play either in Cincinnati, Cleveland, or Baltimore. So imagine if Lamar Jackson was up next for me to pick as far as fantasy football. And I get it that a lot of people are going to take the running backs, or they're going to take the wide receivers, maybe even tight end, depending on who you are. But we all know the quarterback is the most important player in the team. You mean to tell me that if Lamar Jackson's on the board, or let's just say Zay Flowers, or Jamar Chase, or T. Higgins, or any of those type of guys, Kareem Hunt on Cleveland, Deshaun Watson, that I'm going to go ahead and draft that guy? So when I see him twice a year when I'm watching on any given Sunday where Cleveland's playing Pittsburgh, yes, I understand I don't have to start that player that day, but do I really have to go through that? To me, as a sports fan, it is unethical and it's immoral. It is. You mean to tell me that I'm going to root for Deshaun Watson because I have him on my fantasy team against the Pittsburgh Steelers? Oh, I hope he gets 58 points and scores 9 touchdowns and throws for 5,000 yards, but I want the Steelers to win? There is no way on God's green earth, or even in hell, that I would even do that. Why would I subject myself to that? Let any and everybody else do that one more time. Not this guy. Number 6. And I get it, this probably ties in with the greed, as I mentioned about the schedule and all the different platforms, Peacock, etc. I get it. But do we really need to have these extra wild card teams? And I get it, the genie's already out of the bottle. Can't put it back in 100%. It's all about the almighty dollar, the green, the cash, the bread, the moolah. But to me, wild card weekend is just a waste. You have the 6 games, including the Monday night game, which I can't stand. Why not have the 3 games on Saturday, and then you have the 3 games on Sunday? 1, 4, 8:15, or 4:30, whatever it is. Do that. Have football strictly for those 2 days, especially with the playoffs. We don't want, or at least I don't, want a Monday night playoff game. We are tired of football, and I get it that it is the playoffs. It's the road to a Super Bowl, but have it Saturday, Sunday. If that's the case, have a Monday night divisional playoff game. Or have championship Sunday and then you have it on a Monday night. If you're looking for ratings, it's not about that. These games can be played on a Wednesday at 2:30 in the morning. It doesn't matter where on this big marble that we live on. The games will be watched. People will tune in. Remember what I said, 10, 12 minutes ago. Appointment television, must-see TV. Nobody's gonna miss out on this. So for the NFL, again, to have these wild card games Monday night and to have it on Peacock and all these platforms, enough. There's no need to go above and beyond, or to even be extra for that matter, to broadcast an NFL playoff game. Just have it in the normal time slots as opposed to having it Saturday, Sunday. Oh, by the way, hon, there's another football game. It's on tonight, Monday, wild card. And usually the games are done. Remember last year, Dallas at Tampa, where the Cowboys just annihilated the Buccaneers in Tom Brady's last ever playoff game, an NFL game overall. And then this year, where the Eagles had to go to Tampa, and they beat them in week 3 early in the year. And what happened? They got spanked 32-9. By the midway part of the third quarter, you wanted to check out. I'm sure everybody was done. Like, I can't watch any more football. I've had it up to my eyeballs. I watched Saturday, Sunday, and granted that you had the Steelers because of the snow scenario up in Buffalo where they moved the 1 o'clock game to 4:30 on Martin Luther King Day. All right, fine. But still, enough. There's no need for it. Again, genie's out of the bottle. Have it back to where it should be. Saturday, Sunday. And the last thing, number 7, the arrogance of the Shield. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what other sports are being played at the time. They are literally a tank going down the street, leaving everything in its wake. So it doesn't matter on Christmas Day, where the NBA, usually it's their day, and I get it that nobody cares about basketball during the holidays. They're just going to wait for April, May, and June so they can see who's going to be crowned champion in the association. But look at the last 2 years. Christmas Day fell on a Sunday and Monday. NFL didn't care. You could have had the 2 worst teams in the sport. You could have had a situation where Arizona was playing the LA Chargers. And guess what? That would still annihilate anything that the NBA would put out that day. Whether it's Lakers, Celtics, whether it's Golden State, Denver, doesn't matter. Again, NFL reigns supreme, the Shield, ding, 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 ding. Doesn't matter. But that's where the arrogance comes in. And also on top of that, the whole scenario regarding everything that I just talked about, whether it's the schedule, whether it's we don't care how many platforms it's on. And in essence, what does that do? It screws us fans because we have to adapt to what the NFL is doing instead of it the other way around. And we understand it's big business. We understand that they're in a position unlike anything other. The Oscars, the Grammys, there's nothing on TV that comes anything close to what the NFL does. In fact, I believe 100 shows of 2023, 93 of those top 100 were NFL games. Think about that. That is just enormous. But of course, that's feeding the machine. It's feeding the ego. It's pumping the Shield even bigger, bolder, brighter, better. Everybody can't get enough of the NFL. And I understand, it's 1 game a week. It's not the slog of an NBA season. It's not the slog of an NHL season or even Major League Baseball throughout the summer, 162 games. I get it. Football is special in that regard. But the thing is, the powers that be in the NFL aren't making it as special as it once was. And I understand. Times change. It's going to grow. It's going to adapt. It's not going to be the way it once was back 20, 30, 40 years ago when I truly loved the NFL. And that's not to say I love it any less, but slowly but surely, it's starting to creep into my consciousness that the NFL, one day, maybe it doesn't come, but one day it could be off of my radar. Could you imagine? This is what I do for a living. And I don't see it happening anytime soon, but what's going to be next? A game on Mars? Or the NFL putting the Super Bowl on pay-per-view where we have to pay for it? Or maybe even on Nickelodeon? Or like I said, the cooking channel? With the NFL, anything is possible. The Shield will continue to flex their muscles no matter what. And this is with all the scandals that I mentioned and players off the field getting in all these incidents, whether it's car accidents, whether it's domestic violence situations, it doesn't matter. The Shield does not bow down to anyone. And sadly, a majority of the fans, most of us, we still bow down to it because it is highly entertaining and it is a lot of drama. And although it's not the best postseason sport, I could argue baseball is, but again, it is a sport that everybody gravitates to. Everybody's gonna look forward to Super Bowl Sunday. It's an unofficial holiday to get together, to have wings, beer, chili, friends, halftime, etc. It's a spectacle. It's an event. So it's a thing where we want to see out of the 17-game season, which I don't like, by the way. Can we keep it even at 16 or go to 18? Wait, we don't need any more games. I guess keep it at 17. And I hate the imbalance of that. That's like a 163-game baseball season or an 83-game hockey or basketball season. Really? 17 games? Greed! So with all that being said, the Shield is just going to continue to move on. And it's going to continue to do its thing. And it's not going to care about me. It's not going to care about you. Because all they're going to want is for you to sign up on YouTube to get the NFL package, to go buy tickets, to spend exorbitant amounts in parking and in the stadium with concessions and all those things. Fantasy football that they're in bed with, as we all know, the DraftKings, the FanDuels, all these other gambling sites that the NFL just ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. And yes, we could talk about it being big business and this is what it's all about, capitalism, etc. But they're taking the fun out of it. At least they're taking the fun out of it for yours truly. So in closing, I'm sure everybody out there, whether you're stuck with me throughout all this time, which I hope you have, and people are probably thinking, look at this guy. He's on here griping about the NFL. Meanwhile, he talks about watching it and he loves it and so on and so forth. Please, J Reels, nobody wants to hear from you. Well, here's the reason why I'm bringing this up. Because I have every right to gripe, just like you have every gripe to gripe. You may be the same guy or girl that during the 2016 to 2020 range, whether it was Colin Kaepernick taking the knee, or whether it was COVID, or racial injustice, and you still see it on the sidelines or in the end zone with the end racism and all that, where a lot of you, not saying all of you or most of you, but a lot of you wanted to jump ship. Forget about the NFL, 2 middle fingers up at them. I don't need to hear this message. Forget about Colin Kaepernick. Forget about COVID, this, that, the arms locked at midfield and all this nonsense, whatever. I'm tired of the NFL. Well, if that's the case, and if you were staunch on that, then I only hope that you burned your jersey, you canceled your Sunday ticket, you also dropped out of your fantasy football leagues or any gambling when it comes to boxes for the Super Bowl or the weekly sheets when it comes to the point spreads. I hope you had that same energy during that time when you were out here trying to pontificate about how awful the NFL was because of their message and everything I just detailed. So if you have the right to do that, I have the right to do this. And listen, I've been watching football going on 50 years. I can't divorce myself from a team, my beloved Steelers, a league, the NFL, that I've grown up watching. Going back to the 70s when we had NFL Review and Preview with Harry Callis and Steve Sable, the NFL Game of the Week, which I had to watch on a Saturday because unlike today with all the different networks, channels, podcasts, etc., that you'd be up to and beyond your eyeballs with content in regards to the NFL. Back then, I cherished it. I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. And NFL films to this day, yes, Deontay Wilder, it still peaks more than anything else. There's nothing like watching NFL films cut all the tape of the games that took place, whether it's in the regular season or the postseason. I get it. So I can't just all of a sudden break myself off and say, NFL, you're done. I've had enough. Slowly but surely, they're chipping away at that, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. But at the same time, it's already out here. We cannot go back in reverse time to those days of yesteryear when we really just got into the NFL week in and week out, where today we're just either inundated or you just have so much content out there, including this, I might add, I know, that it just makes your head spin. But one last thing, if I may, I know the owners are laughing all the way to the bank, and rightfully so. They're owners for a reason. Some of them deep-rooted, whether it's in the family, where they've had it for decades, or even the new owner who wants to buy the team to get the shiny toy because he wants to brag to all of his cronies how he has an NFL team and he's just one of 32 owners in the nation and on the planet that has one. But one thing I will say that I'm sure if you gave them truth serum and somewhere deep down in their crusty souls that they sold to the devil a long time ago, I'm sure that they would probably feel, maybe not exactly the way I've just spewed over the last 10, 15 minutes or so. I won't go as far as saying that, but I'm sure somewhere deep down in their chest, they probably feel exactly the way that I do. and they know I'm right.